Hello, good evening. We're going to start our open discussion today. And to start off the discussions, we suggested to try and have a constructive discussion around when art is spiritually significant. And perhaps when if beauty and spiritually concerned art are necessarily part of the same kind of equation. But before we start our discussion, we would like to go around and introduce ourselves so that we have an idea of who is who and what we do. You know, why are we here and what we do. So, or maybe you want to mention where you're from. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna follow my screen. Hopefully the order is not gonna change. So I'm gonna start with June and then go down to Judith and then go from left to right downward. So June, would you like to start?
So I'm June. I'm one of the joint chairs of this group. I'm a musician, composer, and a performer. I chair or run a group called Music, Spirituality, and Wellbeing International, which covers 5 continents. And we have conferences, and we've got a series of books that are published on the subject of music and spirituality, drawing on comparisons from all over the world. I'm also an Anglican priest in South London and have written pieces for Winchester Cathedral, but also written pieces which are broadly in rituals associated with the New Age as well as Christian rituals. I'm a hymn writer. I've written over 200 hymns, and I've also specialized in looking at the women mystics, Hildegard of Bingen, Julian of Norwich, and so on. So uh, I've lived quite a long time, so I've done quite a lot of things.
June, Santo is asking where she can find the link to your music, spirituality, and well-being group.
Yes, I will put that in there.
Chat.
I'll put
Yeah.
put the website in there.
Judith, do you want to go next since you're one of our regulars?
I am indeed a regular, and I'm always very pleased to be here, and I feel very honoured to be in such august company because I don't know what I do. I know that I'm interested, and I know that I keep going, and I know that I find out different things, and I know that I've got an opinion. So I'm just delighted to be here and to be able to express it.
Patricia Bowers or Bowers.
Hello, yes, I'm Patricia Bowers. I'm actually an artist. I'm a spiritual artist. I do mandalas, which is one behind me.
Yeah.
So they're very intuitive, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm dyslexic, left-handed. Those were all curses to me when I was growing up. But I went ahead and I started a body of work probably a little later in life with the mandalas. In my 50s, I had a lot of, I would say, spiritual experiences and was prompted to do this work. So my work is all freehand. I get messages of things that I write on the paintings and stuff. And as you can see, the painting, I'm not moving, but the painting sometimes moves around. So, and my dear friend, Patricia Wagner, was the one that said I should come to this group because it would be very enlightening for me as well. So I would agree that there is a significant importance of art and spirituality. And although I did study art in a small community college, I've come to realize that artists have always been preparing the way, whether it's with music or writing or whatever, that they are leaving the memories or the information or the history for humanity. And, it started with a cave drawing. So I recognize and realize how important art is to our well-being. And my website is Patricia M. Bowers. I'll write that on the screen, I guess.
Yes,
yeah.
please. If you can put it in the chat.
Figure that out. I'm challenged, just so you know.
That's all right. No, that's great, actually. This is one, I think, one of our qualities is that we're inclusive in the sense that yes, it's an academic organization, INSS, but we were one of the first group to accept non-academics, to participate, especially artists, because it's a combination of theory and practice, so to speak. So academic theory is great, but you also need artists to create the content so that theory can be written about. And also we have quite a few people who are just interested in spirituality on one hand and art and spirituality on the other. So there's really no bar. We try, the presenters are usually scholars, they're usually professors, but we also have had artists who, like Patricia, work in the spiritual domain. So they consider themselves spiritual artists. So I would like to hear from Claire Leslie Hughes. Hi, Claire.
Hi.
What's your, Claire or Leslie? Claire?
It's Claire.
Claire.
It's Claire. Yes. Yeah. Hi. I don't know how much I can contribute to this because I'm not an artist. I think I was an artist in a former life. I've always had the urge to do art, but I can't do it. I'm a hedge witch. I've got my own business, which specialises more in sort of herbalism. I'm currently a PhD student at York St John, studying herbalism, feminism, and natural magic. So I've recently joined, I think last week. So I thought I'd sort of come along and just listen in, basically.
Actually, it's interesting how in the arts there is a resurgence of this kind of female artists, like, I can't pronounce it correctly. There is at the Tate in St. Eve, there is this exhibition. I will put it in the chat.
Isabel Colhoun.
Yes, thank you. And she was also dabbing in magic and a little bit like what is probably considered witchcraft, which is then linked to herbalism, which is then linked to female knowledge. Usually this was traditional female knowledge of medicine, really.
Yeah.
But then considered.
But it also went through the female convents, and that's why Hildegard, because in a sense that wisdom was well known in the Middle Ages, but we lost it at the Enlightenment, which I prefer, as you've heard me.
Okay, so
say
next,
many times, Annalisa, to call it the endarkenment.
Yes. Patricia Wagner.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here today. I just a little bit about my background. I began meditating in 1977, and I didn't do it for spiritual reasons. I did it to quiet a very anxious mind. But in the course of doing that, oh my gosh, it brought me into that spiritual realm. And so I've been on that focus ever since. I am a New Thought minister and teacher, ordained and licensed, and also I was an energy healer, teaching it and providing energy healing sessions for 16 years during that time. And actually, it was Patricia's artwork that catapulted that career. And so I'm here mainly to give testimony to what her artwork did in my life. So that's why I'm here today, especially. But I'm also really grateful to be here.
I think what would be helpful, Annalisa, is who is it that people you talked about a New Thought minister, and we heard the word hedge witch. They may not be familiar to people. Would it be possible? Who was it? Who was it? Was the head? Was that you, Claire?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
me. Yeah.
Be helpful if you would explain how you see those terms, because they're not familiar to many people.
In terms of hedge witch, the most simplest way that I see it is typically it's sort of like the old woman who used to live out in the woods back in the medieval times, outside of the village, outside of society, whether that's physically or, in my case, neurodivergently. So a hedge witch typically is a solitary witch who is more interested in herbs, natural remedies, that type of thing, as opposed to, I mean, it's sort of similar to a green witch. It's all to do with herbs and nature, stuff like that.
And you used the word New Thought minister, Patricia. Could you explain that for us?
Yes.
I think it would be helpful also if we know which countries people are in.
Yes. My husband and I live in Ocala, Florida. When I started meditating, as I mentioned, and then spirit spirit grabbed hold of me. There was just like after that, which was early on, 1978. Oh my goodness, I started just diving right into metaphysics and spirituality. And I began a 15-year kind of search through books mainly, not really knowing what I was searching for, except for metaphysics and spirituality, spiritual understanding I wanted. The meditation was doing its job, quieting my anxious mind, but that spiritual understanding I wanted so much to know about life. And so it was like 1993, I was dating someone and sharing with him all the things that I had learned through my uncharted course into spirituality, when he said to me, there's a church that believes everything you already believe. And I said, you're kidding. What is it? And he said, it's called Unity. So Unity was my first church in New Thought that I subscribed to. And then I became a licensed Unity teacher. And that was a long course of 17 years, just diving into their academic teachings. And then a couple of years later, I became a divine science minister. So I've studied Ernest Holmes as well, the founder of religious science, now called Centers for Spiritual Living. Joel Goldsmith is one of my favorites. A Course in Miracles is wonderful. And I also taught the energy healing modality I taught was quantum touch. But I combined it with the spiritual knowing that we are in truth, in perfect health and wholeness, no matter what my client was telling me about it. I held that vision for them. So it all plays out. It just all interwoven.
I think you have more of these organizations in the US than we have in the UK. So for us, we can find them on the internet, but we don't have the plethora of organizations, several of which you've sampled in a sense, you've gone into. So I think it's helpful for us in the UK, because often what happens is that they come in through California and then spread out around the world. So you're very much a melting pot there. So
and I want to mention too, if I could, that now I am, for the last several years, I've been very involved with the Scientific and Medical Network, which is out of the UK.
Oh, you have?
Yes, and the Galileo Commission. And I just was on a call with the New Paradigm Navigators, which is for a younger generation. But still, there's so much content there. I mean, it's all really coming together.
Lovely, thank you. So back to you, Annalisa, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, please interject, because you always ask pertinent questions. So in my screen, Harry is next. Hi, Harry.
Hi there. I'm Harry Cedar. I spent most of my life being a scientist. My PhD was in stem cells and leukemia in humans, and I've used that as a model of growth and development and aging. And I've also an academic teaching health and life sciences for many years to health professionals. And I also work nowadays as a chaplain. I've come out of the lab and I'm now a chaplain talking with people and their problems. And I work in a hospital and at a university in London, a major teaching hospital, caring for people in spiritual need. And I have an interest, my background interest is I'm also a rabbi, and I am very interested in Kabbalah and the Hasidic movement that was almost wiped out in the 40s, but started in about 1660s in Eastern Europe. And it's got a very psychological and Kabbalistic background to it. I think they're probably the first psychologists and psychotherapists. If you read their readings, read their writings, they're very advanced on some of the psychotherapy that's come since. And I'm very interested in Kabbalistic writings.
Can I ask you a question? Harry?
I was just going to ask you which London hospital, if you were prepared to share.
I don't want to say. No, I don't want to say.
Okay, lovely.
What brought you to our meeting about art and spirituality?
I used to study quite a lot of art. I'm married to an artist who I would say makes work that can't help. All the artists I know, and they're quite famous artists that I know, make work that they would never say it's spiritual, but there's a great spiritual depth to it. And we would talk about that, but it wouldn't be that sort of obvious, I'm making something spiritual. It would be more Barnett Newman or Mark Rothko, and it just can't help but be spiritual because of, well, their Kabbalistic backgrounds, I suppose. But yeah, so that's where I come from. And I spend a lot of time in art galleries and discussing art with artists. So that's how I'm interested.
Oh, cool. That's great. Thank you. And finally, Santu.
Yes, hi. So I didn't hear what the instructions were of what to say. I get the sense that people are just doing intros and saying why they're here. So I'm a performing artist. I've learned and literary artist. So I've learned all the arts except for visual arts. And I won't become a visual artist. I know that at this point in my life, but I do appreciate visual art and colors and form and all that stuff. So I'm here to see if I can pick up any principles or new insights. I'm also a Church of England priest, also based in London, former healthcare chaplain. So obviously the spiritual aspect of art is something close to my heart because, you know, I blend theology and spirituality and art together in some of the work that I do. And I'm also a psychotherapist as well, so I bring that into my work.
That's quite a lot, Santu.
Yeah. I won't go on then. There's more, but I'll leave it at that.
No, please say more.
Well, I'm a trained group facilitator. I've been studying how to do that at university. I'm very blessed to have done the Masters of Divinity that I did because it wasn't just theology. You know, we learned a lot about group process and group facilitation and all that. And I'm what I'm planning in my mind, what I'm visualizing is a better way to say it, is a discussion group for women. I'm particularly aware of how women's voices were suppressed in the church, theologically and practically in the actual church. So I'm devising a way to raise women's awareness that women did have a place of leadership in the Bible, despite what the men tried to suppress, and to raise women's voices to be able to find their leadership skills, their worth and their leadership skills. So yeah, I'm looking forward to.
I think, Santu, you would like the first book in our series, which is called In Tune with Heaven or Not, Women in Christian Liturgical Music. And it does exactly what you're trying to say, make the voices of women who musically serve the church more well known from the first 200 years right to contemporary people. So I share your concern, and it's still there for those of us who are ordained in the church. We still haven't found an easy place in the church, really.
Yeah, after decades, right? Yeah, it's still being suppressed. Would you mind?
I'm old enough to be one of the ones who fought very hard to get people ordained, and in that process we were spat at.
I know,
ridiculed.
I've heard the stories, right. Yeah, along with the Catholics who were also spat at.
Well, they still are spat at.
Yeah. Would you mind putting the title of that book in the chat, please, or say it again because I missed it?
Yeah. Well, I'm quite surprised to hear that there are 4 ministers today. That's quite amazing. Talk about interreligiosity. It's great. I was hoping more people would would join us in the meantime, but it looks like it's going to be the 8 of us for the rest of the session. So, does anyone want to start?
Annalisa, you haven't introduced yourself.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, so I am the other co-chair of Spirituality and the Arts SIG, which stands for a Special Interest Group. The third one is Lila Moore, who is also a visual artist, not visual, she's a video artist and performance artist, who unfortunately wasn't well, so she's not going to join us today. But in case you're interested, her latest installation has been accepted as is shown as I think as we speak at the Serpentine in the Hyde Park. So I intend to go and see it. I'm like some of you, kind of a hybrid. Like I've started looking into spirituality while I was doing my degree in photography. So if I have to put a label on myself, I am a photographer, or at least I have a degree in photography. Then I had an artistic block for my final project, which is the one that matters. And so I went off a different direction and I went back into painting. And then I was recommended a book, which is The Artist's Way. And then in this book, they talk about the connection between spirituality and creativity. And for me, it was the very first time I've ever heard of it. So then I took an interest in spirituality because I have always been interested in religions, particularly Judeo-Christian religions. Because like some of you here, I was wondering where patriarchy comes from. I was trying to find the roots of patriarchy and why there is such misogyny or simply sexism in society and in the workplaces, and why women struggle so much. So I was trying to understand what happened, in particularly in Judeo-Christian nations, and so that took me to research early Christians and early and Hebrews and their story, and so, but I'm not religious, so I'm not a religious person, which was the other issue, that I have grown up as an secular, a secular person. I was a Catholic, but then I stopped practicing my religion. So I stopped going to church. I had a faith crisis. I stopped believing. And so I came into spirituality without any, as an agnostic, basically, without any religious belief, which is why I realized that art can be a substitute for a religious tradition. And since our societies are becoming more and more secular, not less secular, and since particularly in the UK, but also in the US, religions are retreating. People are leaving institutional religions. Then what you find is a vacuum, and then something is going to fill that vacuum, and it's a spiritual vacuum. So I think we live in, I don't know if they're dangerous times, but they're certainly uncertain, because people are losing their certainties, and we are all looking for our own answers, basically. So I'm on this quest, actually, effectively. And so the next thing I did after my photography degree was to, apart from joining INSS and then starting this initiative in 2022, I then went into anthropology of religion. So I did a master in that. Then, I did a little bit of academic publishing, but, I'm not an academic. I'm not connected to a university. I don't teach. I also did a course on art therapy because I realized that just like spirituality is good for your mental health, so is art. And so there is this intersection of mental health, spirituality, and art and creativity, right? So I'm really studying this crossover. So it's kind of a sweet spot. And because I'm a bit of not a rebel, I'm not a rebel, but when I see something isn't stacking up, I want to understand what's going on. And there are several things in the way that we are taught art and art history and art theory that doesn't stack up. It doesn't. And one of the things that is missing from our current approach to the arts is spirituality. And once you reintroduce spirituality, then a lot of artists suddenly make sense, like Rothko, like Barnett Newman, because they were not, or Ilma Half Klint, because the moment that you stop people from using the word spirituality or explaining why a work is spiritual, the whole thing becomes impossible to explain. And it becomes about matter. It becomes about energy and vibrations. And yes, okay, it is part of the spiritual, but it's not the only thing. It's not just about the physical properties of colors, or just about the physical property of the geometric shapes and lines. And when you try to avoid using the word spiritual, it becomes extremely difficult to explain certain works. And so that was kind of when I realized that, I felt that we were all shortchanged, both, spiritual and non-spiritual art participants. And I think it's important to bring back this dimension in the arts. So that's kind of my mission.
Could I say something? Yeah, this is just wonderful, because what I see is that even in my path, like I really didn't know what I was doing, that I was accused of being a witch, I started having energy come into my hands and body, and that frightened people. That I was called a witch. I said, well, I am, but I'm a white witch. I'm a good witch, if that's what you want to call me. But over the millenniums, art has led me, or my quest to know more has led me all over the world, to sacred sites, to Egypt, to Peru, to India. And, that's where, for some reason, people were frightened. I mean, even like the scrolls that they found in Egypt, that there were scrolls that actually were the writings of Mary. And she was really the one that was to lead the church, but men were afraid of her.
Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene. Yeah. And it was interesting because I have, on my journey, I happened to meet this girl, and her aunt was a Catholic, a Catholic nun. And she was asked because when they found the scrolls, by all of these people, rabbis and theologists and all kinds of things, to analyze those scrolls.
Yeah.
And they presented that to the church, that there actually should be some changes. And they were like, nah.
What a surprise.
I'll have to find that book, and you might be, it's somewhere. But it's just been interesting, because I just know personally for myself that I frighten people with my words. Like when I say, I do this automatic writing, I can see it. And it appears. I have, had dreams. Like, it's been a progression for me. And I don't tell a lot of people that. I feel comfortable here, but it's not everywhere, because people judge you. I have friends that, dropped me because, or told me I shouldn't be saying that. But eventually what happened is, you behave yourself at my dinner party and don't be talking your nonsense. And then when, lo and behold, somebody would see a piece of my art, or they would say, well, I saw those things, I see that writing and stuff. And so, I'm a Canadian, but I live, I'm a Canadian American. I immigrated here to Bradenton, Florida. And it is particularly a difficult time here in Florida, or in the United States, as you well know, with what's happening. And, that there is a push for Christianity, the white men's Christianity. Apparently, there's not an awful lot of room for the rest of the people, Black people, gays, whatever. They're absolutely terrified of that. And so there's a lot of work to do. And I don't know, I saw Jane Fonda speak up, in the arts, that's the way that we're going to move some of these people forward, because it is a frightening time. And I think they've been afraid of women, that they see us as powerful, and they want to take that power away however they can, so, but you all, have a significant part in, even by this discussion, introducing things like you're explorers into the depths of this thing, the music, all of that is art. And, I'm not sure what Donald Trump is going to do in the Kennedy Center. It's frightening, actually, because, he's trying to take control of that too. And apparently there's people willing to let him do that. But I think there's enough people, I have to have hope in my heart that we can change this, because, we've seen what happens when they constrain women, Afghanistan, Iran, countries that, that they just want to squash us. And for whatever reason that is, I think it's just fear. Yeah, I didn't have children, but women have the right, they can reproduce, and so I had this alarming thing happen yesterday. One of my friends was going to a gynecologist, and she said, it was the strangest questionnaire. She hadn't been there before, and she had to identify herself as what sex, and then what sex at birth. And that was a mandatory question on the application to do that. So that's part of what's happening here. So controlling women, we do have, all of that art that I've seen all over the world and the buildings and stuff is that, they want to put a label on that as witchcraft and these were dangerous people. But so I think that that's also a thing that artists are included in, and you all are. I was going to say to Judith, you said you'd like to try art, but sometimes we're blocked, that if you are inclined to do art, no matter what, you should do it, because I think, it could be doodling or whatever. It's that information is out there and it's wanting to be recorded, and
Patricia, Patricia, can we let Harry in?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, because we've got two hands up.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Santu was there first. Sorry.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Annalisa, I wanted to ask you about the comment that you made about it was vague, so I may have misunderstood what you're saying, but I think you were suggesting that spirituality hasn't been imbued into art, or there's not much talk about spirituality in the arts. And being a historian as well, I got curious as to when this developed, this separation of spirituality and art.
Mm-hmm.
The Enlightenment, so-called.
I'm not an art historian, but we've done a little bit of art history in photography. I think art and spirituality were separated when they separated religion from art. So that was the first kind of big, so much so that I read a book about the place of religion in contemporary art. And the author basically argued that there are two separate markets. One is the religious art market, which is outside of the art world and is not allowed into the art world. And one is the art world, which is purely secular. And anything to do with religion, almost any religion, with the exception of indigenous beliefs, indigenous artists, and perhaps Eastern spirituality. So, but anything that is particularly Christian or Jewish, or the big ones, or Muslim, they tend to, the so-called world religions, or Hindu, they tend to be kept out of the art world. That's not me saying that. He's a professor. He teaches art history. I'm trying to remember his name, but Elkins, something.
Could you give an indication of the century, perhaps, of when spirituality and religion got separated from
I think with modernity and perhaps Enlightenment.
Okay.
Because I think it's probably for music. It happens at the French Revolution, at the beginning of Romanticism, and when the church stops employing. Most musicians were employed by either the church or the aristocracy up to the beginning of the 19th century, and then that employment stopped, and you get the independent artist, and so then you get spirituality flowing free in things like Wagner embracing folklore and all of that bit there, and so religion then parted company from art, except of course in the Orthodox Church with its, where you've got the visual art, but the church was then separated, and you get secularization and so on. And so I think that for music, that's where it's employment. It's where they get their money from, really. So.
And I was going to ask also, Annalise, about your degree in photography. I'd never heard of it. And I'm delighted to hear that the University of Westminster offers it, because I think my daughter has a natural gift for photography. She wants to be a graphic designer, but I keep seeing her taking photographs everywhere. And I'm like, I think you're more of a photographer than a graphic designer, because you're not doing any graphic design whatsoever right now. You're just taking photographs. So this is a great lead. So also
there are several universities that
okay.
offer degrees in
Google.
photography. It's really not
I
a
should,
Okay.
if I can add to that, one of the doctorates I supervised was on photography as contemplation, which was on the ability to manipulate photographs. And he did a great deal of that in Winchester Cathedral. And the process of manipulating the photograph was also a process of contemplating the photograph and contemplating his beliefs and so on and so forth. So that was the notion of where photography and spirituality fit is another very interesting area. But I think we should let Harry in, whose hand was up for so long.
It was up for so long that it's gone down. I think that you might be playing to a very old assumption, because I know quite a few people that teach in art schools. I'm talking visual art, but I know quite a few composers as well. And the younger generation are not scared of the word spiritual at all. And they will use it in their work quite a bit. So that they're not, it might be the older academics that are, as particularly the secular ones. And also because, of course, Britain, or London particularly, is very multicultural. So it's got influences from other people. So the Enlightenment didn't hit a whole load of people. They don't know about it. So they've ignored it and gone on their own sweet way. So there is, I think, quite a broad range. I find it very interesting, though, that you're citing it in this sort of Enlightenment and modern era, because I think there is a lot to that. But I think it's swinging around again, because from what I'm hearing.
I completely agree, Harry. So I graduated in 2019. And I took I was doing a part-time degree, not a full-time degree. I started in 2015. No, 15. And I graduated. So it took me 5 years. But the point is, and to answer Santu's question about which university, I attended the University of Westminster, which is a very secular university, Marxist secular university.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's particularly materialistic in that sense. And this course was different from other photography courses because it included a 30% of theory. So 1/3 of the credits was theory and 2/3 was practice. Most photography courses are practice only. And in the theory, they never once mentioned spirituality. And they only mentioned spiritualistic photography. So in around the 19th century, as you probably know, there was a lot of interest in invisible forces, whether it was magnetism or plasma or X-rays, because basically science was discovering all these forces that we didn't know about. They were invisible, and so there was a resurgence of interest in spirits, and so there were a lot of medium session. But people, we're not talking about we're talking about scientists and high society and so-called educated people having seances, and so spiritualistic photography was one of the ways that they tried to capture spirits through the camera. Of course, they weren't, they were fake. They were manufactured, but that was the extent of it. I don't think they've all been proved as being fake. Yeah.
I think the scientists got their teeth into them, and some of them can't be explained. So I don't think it's fair to say the picturing of things like auras, the presence of angels, all of that, they were not all fake. Can't just some of them were manifest, but I think that's not a completely fair judgment. As one who's looked at those, there's a whole massive photography of that kind, which is actually being auctioned, quite a lot of it now, and fetching quite high prices, being accepted now, whether it was fake or not. So I think it's a whole interesting ball game. The beginning of the 20th century, late 19th century, when you got the revival of spiritism and spiritualism and so on. And just
I think we also
let you in, my 1986 thesis had spirituality in it, and in the Viva, this was deleted as being inappropriate for an academic thesis. And I've spent the rest of my life researching the pages which were deleted from my PhD.
I think we should also mention the 1960s and 70s and the LSD movement and all of that and the mushrooms and all of that, which also opened up a whole the gates of perception and all of that sort of stuff.
That's right.
By, some very strong authors, the Aldous Huxleys and stuff. So there's always been that sort of, and it's come back in. We have in Judaism, there's a group that is all about psychogenic medicines. And
but that was also suppressed in the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s. So for 40, 50 years, we haven't heard anything about that again, although there are some, famous in their own realm artists like Alex Gray and his wife, Alison Gray, who have continued not teaching, because they don't teach taking psychedelics, but they are apologetics. Like their art is the result of their psychogenic trips and journeys. And now, because again, the research on psychedelics is becoming legitimate again, he's now showing in London. They've turned his paintings and her paintings into projections. And with music, they created these immersive experiences in Canary Wharf. I'll put it in the chat. And and I need to go also because there is now they have two exhibitions. One is Alex and Alison Gray, but the other one is a different. Let me put it in the chat, and it's about meditation and transcendence and breathing. So they have these two exhibitions alternating. But the Alex and Alison Gray were extended from the end of December. It was supposed to end in December, so it must have been successful. They must have had, a good response from the public. So that I agree with who was saying that. I think it was Harry. Yeah, it was Harry. That there is a revival of spirituality, also at institutional level, like the Tate, for example, the Royal Academy. So Marina Abramovic, for example, in 2023, Hilma af Klint in 2024. Now Ithel, how do you say it, Judith? Ithel Cohun at the Tate in St. Ives, and is going to come to London. So yeah, I think it's getting more legitimacy and acceptance for sure.
Santu.
I think that might be a legacy hand, but I was asking Annalisa if I could have your email, please, so we can speak further.
Yeah, no, I will definitely give you my email.
Let me lower my hand because
I just want to find allora, illusionaries. So
the hippie movement in music, of course, was fueled by numerous drugs. I mean, most of the people at the center of the 60s, drugs were commonplace and were readily available. sitting on desks for people to take pictures of it whenever they needed it. So it's been a regular part of the music scene. Indeed, there are very few people, even Elvis Presley, who claim that he didn't take them. Of course, was getting them on prescription from numerous people around him. So the wealth of drugs fueled the music, and still does fuel the music industry, particularly the rock and pop scene. Judith.
Hello. Speaking about psychedelics, it's quite interesting because I did go to a couple of psychedelic circles because I became interested in the fact that many of these young people who've gone through those experiences find it quite difficult to contextualize them. And it brings into focus for me my hope that this was going to be slightly more delving into perhaps what spirituality is and how it presents in art. Or I'm looking at an Annalisa thinking, help me.
What do you mean?
Well, you're the academic as far as I'm concerned, Annalisa. So I'm quite interested. There's magic. Now, magic is to do with the manipulation of images. So that can come into play with witchcraft, if you like, but equally it's in visualization. It's a part of meditation as you go into deeper and deeper brainwaves, into alpha and then into theta. You begin to visualize. So it's all that kind of thing that I was hoping to talk more about, but I'm trying to find a way into it. And somebody's showing some pictures. Oh, Patricia.
I don't know.
Patricia. Patricia, can you unshare? Let's see.
I think one of the interesting things in the music scene, when you had the big parties which were fueled by very loud music, the use of psychedelic drugs, and prolonged periods of dancing, that phenomenon was not new in the late 20th century. It's part of the spirit possession cults of Central Africa. And you will get visionary experiences, and people did. The two problems in that culture, Judith, the dangers in that culture were in the spirit possession cults in Central Africa, where this was standard practice. One, there was a shared belief system which everybody shared, and that wasn't true of those parties. So people couldn't make sense of the visionary experiences when they got them. And secondly, that in the spirit possession cults, the elders were there to help with people when they took too much of the psychedelic substances and were ill. But in those parties, the elders weren't present. They were all young people. The elders were distant drug barons feeding that culture. And so the phenomenon of getting a spiritual experience by dancing for a long period of time to loud music and taking hallucinogens was not new. It's been as old as the hills. But the problem was where it sat in contemporary culture so when you had a visionary experience in spirit possession, it would be explained and say, the ancestors come back at this time, you're seeing so and so and so and so, and that's what happens. But nobody could say this in the parties because there was no shared belief system in which you could put those experiences when you got them. So it was a revival of an old experience, but it didn't have the parameters around it that it did in the original cultures which were doing that. We see a rise of it now with the use of ayahuasca, which is rising again, and people are being very careful to keep it in its original ritual. So you don't take it at home, you take it in a ritual context the ayahuasca plant is prayed to, is regarded as holy, and is taken as almost as a person is, as having a life and so on. So we're seeing even drugs like that reappearing in the culture, but people stressing that it needs to be in the context of a ritual, not flying free. With no, I think you used the word contextualization, Judith, not being contextualized in any way. And I think that's the risk.
Sorry. Unfortunately, if you have spiritual experiences through meditation and they're outside one of the major religions, it is very hard to contextualize them. I mean, they're psychophysiological experiences, as far as I can work out. So they're almost things that occur naturally to humans. And they give ideas, they give a view of the infinite and of aspects of the infinite. And I think that's where beauty could possibly come in. Beauty is a problem because of the different aesthetics that happen in different cultures.
Yeah.
So it becomes a question of the same as in religion. It has to be embodied, or a spiritual experience has to be embodied and therefore understood like that. So if somebody has finds a trigger in something that they're seeing, it could be a beautiful sunset, it could be an amazing sculpture. It's what happens within them, and that is the spiritual experience, so that we're able to manifest.
So I think what happened after the around about the beginning of the 20th century was the pathologization of the visionary experience. It became pathologized. It wasn't pathologized before that. So you had a whole raft of women mystics in particular who were perfectly, who fitted, they were accepted as, and the last one really, before it's pathologized, is Bernadette of Lourdes. And then after that, people begin to see the visionary experience as part of a pathology, which of course is ridiculous, but that's the way psychiatric medicine sees it. So people who receive visionary experiences are often regarded as ill rather than as well, and the experience is regarded as pathogenic rather than salutogenic, because these experiences can be very, and there are plenty of them around. It's just that people won't talk about them because they're pathologized.
But do you think that what Judith is really saying, I thought, was very much about the artist as an internal person? They're not translating some visionary experience outside. They're thinking into themselves about their own feelings, beliefs, experiences, and then making it, rather than having this external religious transformation experience. Most of them are bringing, I think you're saying, from the inside out. They're thinking into their own spiritual core to bring it out, or beliefs, or
I don't
feelings.
know. I don't think that was quite what I was trying to say, Harry, but I'm not very good at saying what I want to say. Sometimes it gets a bit lost in translation.
I think what you say is interesting, Harry, because there's a shift from around about that time, from regarding these as coming from a divine source, from them coming from the inside and from the core of the being. So composers, for example, like Handel, surrounded by angels to compose Messiah. Then we get, in the beginning of the 20th century or mid-20th century, composers talking about expressing their innermost being. So there's a sort of shift as where these experiences come from, whether they're coming from a divine spirit outside or coming from the inner core of the being.
That's actually, June is touching on something yeah, that I've also encountered in anthropology, which is this up until, I don't know exactly the century, but let's call it the 17th century, artists were thought and believed of being inspired by an external presence, an external entity. So the inspiration has as a root has spirit. So it was something external taking possession of their own creativity, and then they were able to create. But most artists would probably, and today as well, would probably say that they were just translating something. They would receive something from the outside, from the cosmos, from whatever, and put it in words, or put it in a song, or put it in a work of art. And then but in the last couple of centuries, I think, certainly in the last 100 years, art has become about expressing an internal state, an internal emotion, or an internal trauma, or an internal. So, and I suppose that's because of psychoanalysis. I think maybe that's, what changed the direction of what we perceive as inspiration and creativity.
When I was working with the Mi'kmaq people, who are traditional Canadian people living in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and I said to the woman who was leading the sweat lodge, a wonderful song, and she said, yes, the creator spirit gave me all of it today. So she was still the notion that she was just simply receiving the song rather than the creating the song. So it's still alive and well in some of the indigenous cultures, but it isn't so alive and well in the Western culture. I mean, in John Tavener, who I knew very well, always regarded as he was receiving the music from an outside source all the time, and so on.
Sorry,
do you want to come in,
what's
Patricia?
going on with your screen? You're muted.
You're muted.
Patricia,
You're
we
muted,
can't hear
Patricia.
you, honey. Unmute.
Can unmute.
So that happens when I'm sitting in front of one of my paintings, and they move. I'm perfectly still, and there is energy. I was trying to show you that one picture that I sent you is orbs. There are orbs that fly around this house, and I can capture them. So, the photographers in there, the cameras now are so sensitive that they can pick up energies that, that before we couldn't do that. And so when I've been in these sacred sites, they're photographed around, and like I can be out and meditate at night in the dark, and often I feel this light fly by me. And so I started to record these orbs, and they fly out of the painting. Sometimes they're in the bedroom, they're balls of light. And I've been to England to those crop circles, and they're pretty impressive, so you have a huge history there. And I remember the first time I went, there was a woman said that I was at Glastonbury, and she said that she was asking what we were doing, and we were at a crop circle convention, and she said, well, those have been around and they're in paintings. And so some of these older paintings, they have them in there, like these balls of light and geometric patterns, so that's what's happening in my house all the time. And people that have come to stay, because this is my gallery. I've got work all over the world, but it's not been through audiences. People hear about me, and that's how my work is. It's very personal to people. They seem to find me. It's the strangest thing. So I do believe that this is what I'm meant to do, is to this work, mandalas awaken people. And anybody that's like, I think I sent, I don't know if that picture was those orbs were at 4:44 in the morning when we went to the Great Pyramid to meditate. And those things are all over the place. But not everybody can photograph them. That you just ask them to be revealed to you. So that's what's happening. If I can send you one of those pictures with those light balls flying around here. But all my life I've had these experiences. I'm one of 9 children in a small community, never had an art lesson, but ended up going somewhere that, I took my studies and I've just evolved through that. And I can definitely say it's spirit that's driving me to do the work that I do. And I think that there's a lot of artists that do that. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Patricia, the other Patricia, you were trying to add something too, weren't you?
I was, and I don't know if anybody can pull up patriciambowers.com, but I can show you the painting that had a real effect on me initially. And it was through synchronistic happenings that I met Patricia Bowers in the year 2000. And I was going to have a women's gathering at our house in St. Petersburg. And I asked Patricia, would she bring some paintings over to have on display during this women's gathering? And one of the paintings that she put on display, Patricia, can you show in Hopetep? Can you show it by pulling up your?
I'm pretty challenged there.
Okay. Well, if somebody can pull up her website, I can show you the painting. But anyway, it shows like the third eye, and then these, I don't know, it's the colors or what it was. But when my husband got home that day, and I took him over to look at these different paintings that were on display. No.
Right. Is that not it? Sorry.
No.
No.
How do I stop this?
No, patriciambowers.com is the website. Patricia M.
Is
Bowers.
it in the chat?
No.
Yeah, it's in the
Yes, the website's in the chat.
I put it in there. Yeah, Patricia Bowers.
Yeah.
Find it. Was it at the beginning? Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it. Okay, so let me try again. Share. I want to share this.
Excellent. So if you'll scroll down where it says gallery, view paintings, let's see.
View paintings?
It's go to the next gallery down there, the button that says next gallery. And then you
by
can
the way.
Advance it 3.
The third one. It's the third one.
The third painting. Yeah. There you go. That's it. So that painting, I stood in front of it with my fiance, my husband to be, and whatever it was, oh my gosh, I just started heaving this total meltdown into this painting from the energy I felt coming from it. It was just, I don't know what it was. I didn't know the name of this painting. It just struck me at such a deep, deep, profound inner level that I really just was heaving in front of it for no reason that I could logically explain. And my husband's a mental health counselor. So I'm heaving, and finally when I could start to speak again, I said, I think we need to buy this painting. And he looked at me and he says, oh yeah, I think we do too. So we did. And when I told Patricia Bowers about it, and I asked her what the name was, she said, the name. She said, first of all, well, I think maybe you're a healer. I said, oh, no. And then she said, you know, the name of the painting is in Hotep, the healer, who Patricia will have to explain to you who he was. But anyway, sure enough, you know, a couple of years later, I'm into doing energy healing and teaching it to other people as well. So that kind of catapulted it. But it was a couple of years later, or maybe a year or so later, I was at a soiree at one of Patricia's gatherings at her condo, where she had all of her paintings on display. And in that next, if you'll go to the next gallery, down there, yes, and move over to the Temple of Healing. I think it's like over farther to the, over farther. Keep going. Keep going.
They're beautiful, by the way.
No, that one right there. No, that's not it either. Where's the Temple of Healing?
Probably at the end, Temple of Healing.
Is that the end?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Okay. No, that's not it either. So it's over to the left, I guess.
Yeah, right. It's one more. Next one.
5.
There.
That's it. All right. So as I'm at this soiree at her house, it's filled with people, and I'm just going around again to each painting to feel what I feel. And I know, granted, I have a sensitivity to energy, so I do know that. But I'm standing in front of this one, which was on display on an easel. And it was like, I'm feeling into it. And all of a sudden, I felt myself just energetically floating right, just being drawn right into the center, that geometric center of it. And at the simultaneously, the energy pouring out from the very center of that painting was coming into me. And so I ended up buying that painting as well. And since then,
No, I'm really, to be honest, I'm very fascinated by hearing your reaction to what is essentially an abstract painting, because that's kind of what Kandinsky was trying to achieve with his very first abstract paintings. And although he tried to paint music rather than, you know, like he was trying to make painting, as he considered music the highest form of art, and so painting had to try and imitate music, and that's how he conceived abstract painting. But he did believe in the power of, in the energy of colors, in the energy of shapes, in the energy of the composition. A lot of his paintings are called compositions. But it's really Hilma af Klint that was painting under science. So while possessed by her, she didn't call them guardians, she called them, anyway, they were these astral presences, astral entities that talked to her.
and Annalisa, can you write it in the chat, her name, or
Hilma af Klint, yeah.
Yeah, please.
Can I
Thank
stop
you.
sharing? I just wanted to show you, just because I feel there is resonance between Patricia's work and Alex Gray's work.
I didn't do drugs.
Sorry?
I didn't do drugs. I've been accused
No,
of.
I know. But I think his paintings are more figurative. So he's almost trying to paint our physiological centers of energy, you know, whether it's veins or our nervous system, heart pumps, you know, brain, or our network of energy. But I don't know, I guess it's the colors, maybe. It's the brilliant colors, and some of your paintings have figures in them, or I can see figures, like in the previous gallery.
Yeah. That when I started doing this, I had in that particular painting, I had this experience where I was told to do this work, and I was shown something, and it was called the Temple of Healing, and I saw all these figures, and that was one of the abstract figures that I was supposed to do, was to be more palatable for people to understand. Like I can do realistic art, but that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. So I've been directed to do that because it activates knowledge that we have. That's what they told me, that it activates knowledge that we have in us, and it awakens us to this higher possibility. I'm familiar with Helmut Klint's work because one day there was some Swedish people, friends of mine, came over and they saw my work, and they mentioned her work, and she was, chastised. She was really, a brilliant artist, and it wasn't until the it was in the 90s when she got her work finally, shown, and people realized the depth of what she created. And so I think that for me is that, just to answer that question, in Hopetat was the architect, and I didn't even know who he was. And he was probably the first healer, because they found when he built the pyramids, the Red Pyramid, the Step Pyramid, that there were bodies and bodies were healed, and there was surgery done. And there was some thought that he should be the one that they swear the Hippocratic Oath to, as opposed to, is it Pythagorean? The doctors that they swear oaths to.
Hippocrates.
Hippocrates, yeah. And so that's part of the going into that depth of things that, I think that there's a lot of artists, and that you certainly do with your music, is that you're calling in something outside in and creating this beautiful masterpiece that activates. Now they're saying frequencies, colors have frequencies, music has frequencies. They're using frequencies to heal people, so anyway, thank you for allowing me to speak. And it's not always I get to do that, because I know that it frightens people. So anyway, thank you.
Well, yeah, the other group that would be very, very interested, or you might be interested in joining, is the SMN group, the Scientific and Medical Network, because they're certainly not scared by what you're saying. They will welcome you with open arms. You're the living proof of what they're saying.
Thank you. Well, if you would, that link, so that's another group then?
Yeah, it's a different network, although INSS and SMN are doing more and more things together, include an Aleph Trust. So it's kind of these three, they're separate entities, they're separate organizations, but the same people tend to gravitate to all of them.
Okay.
If you're interested in what I said about pathologizing the vision, I'm talking at another part of INSS, and that's the people who are dealing with mental health in July, looking at the pathologization of the visionary experience for them. It's a similar gathering like this, where people discuss.
Yeah. So
I'm just wondering whether Claire had anything to add, because we're getting very near the end of it at all.
I'm just happy listening in. Like I said, I don't really have any experience or knowledge. I've done some sort of reading about chakras and Hindu mandalas and things like that, but yeah, I don't really have a lot of experience, so it's just been really interesting listening in. So thank you.
Claire, you might get a mandala book, because they could balance your brain. I couldn't read like books. I had a really difficult time reading, and doing this work brought me into a place where I started reading like 10 books at a time.
Yeah.
So you can just get a mandala book, and they're available, and just paint, because it takes you into that place. Like our bodies are geometric patterns, like the Leonardo da Vinci, the man, and all of that. Encourage yourself to do that, and it's I think you'd be surprised with because I'm looking at your body here. Like you actually are a work of art,
Thank you.
So there's a reason why you're doing that, and I'm not sure what that is, but you're trying. I think there's an expression there, and that there's an opportunity for you to bring that out by just working with them. And who knows, just get a circle and see what you can do in a ruler, like on your own. Just get some paper and start with that, because you'd be surprised with you're activating in yourself.
I actually what you were saying about people being frightened of you, I've had that my entire life. And I've never been willing to talk about my spirituality, my interest in witchcraft. So I actually think the reason why I have these tattoos is to almost force it out there. So I don't have to talk about it, but you can clearly see what I'm interested in. So I think it was a sort of a subconscious way of trying to speak about my interests, but without speaking about them, if that makes sense.
I bet you're very intuitive. I'll just say it.
I do have a book actually on Hindu goddesses, and I can't remember the correct term, but each goddess has a mandala. And you can meditate on that to get a connection to a specific Hindu goddess. And that book is really inspiring. I'm going to have to get it back out again. Definitely.
People often use Hildegard's visionary experiences from the Middle Ages as mandalas, and people find those very helpful as well. So they're widely available on the internet.
Okay, cool.
So, we're coming to the end of this session.
Do we have a summary of what makes art, spiritually significant in your opinion? We talked a lot about energy and, well, we talked about spirits really, but do you have like canons that are possibly emerging from this discussion?
I don't like canons.
What would you like to call them?
Can I quickly ask
principles? I don't know what you.
Can I ask
you want to speak?
Yeah, just a quick question before we end. Is this because this is my first meeting? Is this a regular meeting? Is this meet monthly or regularly?
Well, okay, so we try to keep it monthly, but it really depends on the availability of speakers. And we tend to do open discussions once a quarter and keep the other 2 meetings for speakers. But currently we don't have anyone booked in the calendar. So I'm preempting June's question about our next meeting. We do not have in the calendar a next meeting yet. But we tend to have them every month or every other month. So roughly 8 meetings a year, roughly 8 or 9 a year.
And is it always
sometimes every 6 weeks?
Yeah.
And is it always on the topic of spirituality and art, or can the speakers talk about something else?
No,
our spirituality and the arts.
Okay.
But there are other groups that talk about education,
mental
health. And there was one with, well, it was never an open group, but there was one about spirituality and consciousness. Do you have
a conference in June?
Yes. So please come to the conference.
It's in Northampton.
I'm gonna put the link. Let me see. So if you go on this page, you'll see all the events, past and future here. The best, this is a charity, it's a non-profit organization. So obviously they're looking for members because that's how they keep it alive. And I think the most important thing, apart from our SIGs, the two other most important things that they do is a journal, which is the Journal for the Studies of Spirituality. And the other thing is this conference, which is biennial. So it's every other year. And it's a very small organization. I think there are around 200 to 250 active members. I think their database is about 600 people, but a lot of people don't renew their membership. And this is obviously a problem because it's small and it needs money to stay alive, because we are doing everything on a volunteer basis. So no one is paid to do what we're doing. But if people can support it through donations or becoming members, it will be appreciated, because the SIGs were one of the ways that we were trying to get new members on one hand and make this organization into a community, because otherwise it was just the journal, it was just a biannual conference. So there wasn't a sense of community. And our SIG has been going on for the longest. So we started in 2022 and we've had a total of 23 meetings so far. And if you have people to recommend as speakers, you would like to do it, Patricia?
Well, I might, but what I would like to ask is, I have some musician friends who
That
are,
would be brilliant.
to ask them for your next meeting. I would like to invite them.
Yeah, also if they want to present,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
we try to have a high bar as in academic, but for our artists is different. It's about talking about it's about presenting their work through the spiritual lens.
Yes. And I would like to present in the future sometime, but next time I want to invite some musicians that I
Okay.
know. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll try and book one for March, June. We're gonna have to set a date. Okay, so I'm gonna stop recording. Thank you very much. It was a really interesting conversation.